I've noticed something, John.
What have you noticed?
Having to play the bets role means that when our intro is playing, I'm not doing the crazy dancing that I normally do.
I've noticed that
Because I
you're
feel
more
like
studious. There's a little
yes,
more pressure on you.
there is. It feels
Um,
like I have to be like Grandpa Betts and
yeah,
be boring. So
absolutely. So I'll just hold down the role of
yeah.
lovable idiot. I play that role well, and let you be the responsible one.
Fortunately for our listeners, they don't technically miss out because I'm pretty sure those don't even make it onto YouTube. Although maybe one day there will be a compilation of us dancing in the background.
I think there should be.
Yeah.
That should be something that we do. We need to go back through all of the like backstage recording clips that we have and put together an edit of really just you and I. I don't think Betts has
Oh yeah.
ever once,
No.
ever
That's what I'm saying.
once.
It's Grandpa Betts.
Yeah, Grandpa Betts,
All
who's
right.
now
Well.
married.
Oh,
A fine
true.
sir,
Yeah.
now newlywed with his lovely bride, still out.
Basically, well on his way to actually being Grandpa Betts at this point. Let's be honest. Um.
He's emerged into the group text a few
True.
times
True.
for about 3 minutes and then
Yep.
disappeared again. They
So
leave for their honeymoon. Today is Monday. They're leaving on Tuesday tomorrow, and then they'll be back this weekend. And yeah, we're happy for that.
yeah, we will have one more show after this where there is no bets, everybody. But then he will be back, and I can go back to being an idiot.
True.
Like John said, it is Monday evening. When you hear this, it will be
Wednesday?
I believe so. Yes, Wednesday is the release date for this pod. And there will probably be some more news than even what we're about to cover, but we will get into that briefly. Before we do, just a reminder. Follow the Red Shirts accounts on social media at RedShirtsFFPod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Follow both of us, by the way, at Matt Okada, at Dynasty Beard. John's tweeting all kinds of stuff about the other ball sports that are happening right now, so if you're interested in those. And I'm tweeting basically nothing, but you can still DM me if you want.
Yes.
I'll also follow Betts at the Fantasy PT.
Yeah, that guy. That schmuck. I am interested in baseball. I am interested in basketball. There's lots of good stuff happening with live sports back on the television. So if you want to talk about any of those live sporting events, I'm happy to talk.
Including the Red Sox sucking, right?
Oh, don't you dare.
Ooh, let's get into the news.
I got great news, guys.
Hey,
Let's get news.
Yes.
News. Speaking actually of the Red Sox sucking, let's talk about their neighbors, the New England Patriots.
Yes, let's.
Who this has really nothing to do with them sucking, although maybe a little bit. They have placed Sony Michel and Mohamed Sanu both on PUP, the physically unable to perform list, to start camp. Not great especially for Sony. Obviously, we expected him to be the primary ball carrier in New England this season. After some, I guess you could say disappointing, I would say a little subpar first couple seasons after being drafted in the first round, was a potentially very valuable dynasty asset. Now, lots of concerns. The injury concerns certainly have been there. We don't have bets on here to tell you exactly what they are, but what we do know is that he's starting camp on PUP. Not a great sign. If this potentially carries into the season, which it may, or even if it just makes him less effective and he's, available to start games, John, what is your interest right now in Damien Harris?
Very, very much so interested in Damien Harris. I thought he was a really nice prospect out of Alabama. Enjoyed him a lot. Kind of got lost in the shuffle, buried in the depth chart last season. Only saw like a handful of carries on the season in his rookie season. But I think that with everything that's going on with Sony, I think he's going to get a crack at it. I think he's going to get an opportunity to start a game or two as the first running back, out there on the field, getting majority of the carries, and they're going to see what they have. You don't invest a high draft capital in a running back without seeing what the talent level is. Sony's been battling injuries, for the last year, looked really just not confident in his cuts last season with those injuries. So I think that Damien Harris his ADP is only going to continue to rise as we get closer to September, and there's more and more chatter about that backfield and Sony's injuries. So I'd be happy to go get him right now, and see what happens. See if they give him a good workload.
Yeah. Also, just a refresher for people, because I think pretty much everybody has forgotten. Josh Jacobs was the secondary Alabama running back.
Yes,
Mr. RB1 Dynasty darling Josh Jacobs was behind Damian Harris for most of his collegiate career. So I also like him. I think he has a future there in New England and potentially on your fantasy roster. So I'd be certainly willing to go maybe make some offers on him. I imagine that the price will be pretty decent right now considering the news, but if you believe in him as a prospect, it might be worth paying that price. Also, just as a note, the Patriots tend to mix up their running backs a lot. Things will be all over the place, but what they also do is score touchdowns with their running backs. And I think Damian Harris is going to be the odds-on guy to score a lot of those touchdowns. So potentially very valuable asset. Also, James White.
Yes, please.
Oh my gosh. If you are a dynasty contender, I don't think we mentioned him at all in our trade for these guys if you're a dynasty contender. But if you're I would offer a high second, I think. If I was a contender to get James White right now, listen, Kyle Borgioni, editor extraordinaire of the Fantasy Footballers, puts out articles about, and Betts has mentioned these many times before, where the targets tend to go when receiving options are gone, and it's typically to the running back position. The Patriots have already been thrown to the running back position for a long time. James White has been a huge proponent and beneficiary of that. And
he's like an RB. He's like an RB16 every year in PPR.
Yeah, yes.
Because of his receptions without carrying the ball at all.
100%.
Yeah.
And this is now no Sanu. He may get more snaps as a running back with Michelle out. We don't know what's going to happen with N'Keal Harry.
Marquise Lee also opted out on the season, who was a new addition to that wide receiving room. It's like Jacoby Myers and N'Keal Harry, and that's and Edelman. But yeah, James White's going to get a lot of volume. At least in the passing game. And with what's going on at the running back position, he might get a little more carry there than we're used to seeing as well. He's a screaming value.
Also, one other name of slight interest, especially for Dynasty, Rashad Penny also starting camp on pup for this Pump you up on the pup for the Seahawks. We didn't really expect him to get any lead role work, even if he was healthy, and we also kind of expected this a little bit more maybe than Michelle. But with this being the case, do you even have interest in holding Michelle or in holding Penny right now? Or are you just dumping him, and are you maybe investing a little bit more in Chris Carson?
I'm more in on Chris Carson this year.
Okay.
If I'm in a win now mode, I think that Chris Carson is a great trade target. I think that he is looking like he's recovering well. Rashad Penny obviously is not. They do still have Carlos Hyde there, but they tend to feature. They just got him, but they tend to just feature one running back. This is not an offense that's going to give the ball to a lot of different backs. Carlos Hyde feels like he's a depth piece / insurance policy if something happens to Carson. So I think that Carson's going to be the lead dude. We've seen him be very productive in that role if he's healthy. So if he can stay on the field, and they love him, and they don't care if he fumbles, if he is on the field, I think that he is way undervalued right now. From a dynasty perspective, long-term, looking out 2-3 years, I don't know that they're going to re-sign Chris Carson. They tend to just not re-sign running backs. So I don't know if that's going to happen this next offseason because this is the last year of his contract. So he's really a one-year rental for me, the way that I'm looking at him right now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit of interest in DJ Dallas long-term. I think that maybe in 2021 they give him a crack at the job. But, man, Rashad Penny, I loved him coming out of San Diego State, 2,000 yards from scrimmage in his last season. Super electric. It didn't make sense for them to take him over Nick Chubb, but I did think that he was going to be very good for that offense, and unfortunately just hasn't panned out. He's never gotten up to speed in the NFL, marred by a couple injuries. Sorry, dude. I hate to see it, but I just think that he's run his course.
Yeah, I am not interested at this point. All right, well, there are several other names in the quote-unquote news section, but they all belong to the first team we're going to talk about in today's Dynasty by division breakdown, because it is the NFC North today and this week, while we wait for Betts to return so we can talk about the East and have his Eagles involved. You're welcome,
Yes.
Betts. And the first team we'll talk about in the NFC North will be the Detroit Lions, because the COVID situation over there is not great right now at all. A few days ago, Galladay and Hawkinson, Kenny Galladay, TJ Hawkinson, both got put on the COVID list. A couple days after that, Matthew Stafford got put on the COVID list. And we learned within the last 24 hours that, A, Matthew Stafford was actually tested positive for COVID, and that Geronimo Allison has now opted out. Now, that's not really bad news.
No, I'm fine with Geronimo
as far as
Allison.
I'm concerned.
Yeah.
So let's start with Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
I talked earlier a few weeks ago about how this COVID list was a big question mark, because if you put people on there, it could be because there's a concern that they've contracted it, or because they actually have it. Now we know that Matthew Stafford actually has tested positive. If he comes out of this healthy, he's a veteran quarterback. This is one of those guys that I mentioned. This kind of is good. Obviously it's not great. It's certainly not good that he's sick. I certainly hope there's no lasting repercussions. I certainly hope everyone around him, especially his wife, stays healthy.
Right.
But him having COVID now, I don't care if he misses any camp. He's Matthew Stafford.
Right.
That greatly reduces the chance he's going to have it in season. This probably just is good for him all around. For fantasy, I guess I should say. Do you disagree at all with that?
No, I don't disagree with that at all. Obviously, I wish this on literally nobody.
Of course.
It's a terrible thing. There are some very real concerns with his family, newborn at home, wife with past health issues. She just had brain surgery. Was it this offseason?
I believe so.
So they've got a lot going on at home, and you thoughts and prayers out to the Stafford family, and hope that everyone else is staying healthy. I saw Tom Pelissero tweet out that it looks like he's asymptomatic at this point, which is great.
Sweet.
So hopefully it's a very, very mild test positive. His body can fight it off. Everyone stays healthy in that family. He stays at home for a couple weeks, or I don't even know where he is. Maybe he's isolating somewhere else away from his wife and kid right now. I don't know. And then he gets back and everything's ready to roll. So from what you said from a fantasy standpoint, I agree with it. It's better now than in season from a fantasy standpoint. Hopefully it's nothing major and he's back soon.
All right. And assuming everything pans out decently well, we love him for redraft.
Yeah.
We love him equally well for Dynasty. 32 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 32 years old. Has a great young wide receiver one in Kenny Galladay. They just drafted a young rookie who with a lot of talent at the running back position in DeAndre Swift. They have a young tight end in TJ Hawkinson. Certainly it seems like he has the weapons around him to be good for several years. Mm-hmm. Does he break into your top 15 for Dynasty, do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like
top
that's not even – yeah, I think I'd be flirting right around there for Matty Stafford. I love Matt Stafford. I think he's fantastic. He's a very underrated quarterback. That system, they've started developing a system that really works with him and his skill set. His average depth of target last season was way up from 2 seasons ago. They're really letting him turn it loose. He's a good decision maker. He doesn't turn the ball over a ton. They've got young stud weapons around him, which that's all you can ask for a dynasty quarterback. He's got Kenny Galladay, who's an emerging wide receiver one from a fantasy standpoint. Marvin Jones, a veteran, solid wide receiver two. TJ Hawkinson, entering second-year tight end, stud. DeAndre Swift, stud. Like, what's there not to like? It's not like he's 38, 39 years old. The dude's still got plenty of time left in his prime years. So, I have no concern with ranking him probably right around the 12th spot for dynasty purposes.
Yeah, he's currently at 13 for me, so right there. And a couple guys just ahead of him in Goff and Baker Mayfield only get there because they're younger. But if you're, we like to play for win now. Certainly if your team is ready to win now, and like you said, 32 years old, he's not slowing down in the next 3-4 years. I love getting me some Matthew Stafford. So, Matty Snapback, as Betts likes to say.
Matty Snapback. If you got someone in your league that has Matt Stafford, you're in win now mode with a younger quarterback. Maybe that person is not quite as high on Stafford, age, injury last year. You might be able to flip your young quarterback for Stafford plus. And I think that Stafford is going to give you a higher return this season and help you with winning it all this year.
Yeah. Also, if you haven't gotten enough Matthew Stafford love from us on the pod, there is an article in the Patreon community only, exclusive to the Patreon community, where I talk about Matthew Stafford's ADP value this year. So yet another good reason to get in that Patreon. All right, let's talk about the other pieces. We mentioned them in passing because there's a lot of good ones. Running back, let's start with the running back position. Obviously, they drafted Kerryon Johnson a couple years ago, has dealt with a lot of injury issues that have kept him on the field for large chunks of seasons, but has looked good whenever he's played. Certainly flashed the pass-catching ability he has, but the Lions go out and draft DeAndre Swift this year, 35th overall. Second running back off the board, a lot of people tend to forget because obviously the exciting name after CEH in the first round is Jonathan Taylor, but Swift went 6 picks earlier, right after the end of the first round. You could almost consider him a first-round pick.
Was it like 34th, 35th?
35th. I know Betts, DeAndre Swift was his favorite prospect just on prospect evaluation before the draft. I also absolutely love him. You're the running back, Master. What do you think is the kind of the midline projection for DeAndre Swift on this team in Dynasty, and what do you think is the ceiling?
In terms of 2020 production or long-term?
All of his career.
All of it.
Dynasty value.
Dynasty value, I think that DeAndre Swift is an RB1 talent, a fantasy RB1 talent. He was my rookie running back 2 behind JT ahead of CEH from a talent perspective. Now, obviously, landing spot changes things. When you have someone go to Kansas City, you're probably going to move them up. And we all know what's going on with CEH just skyrocketing into the stratosphere and people debating if he's a better dynasty value right now than Christian McCaffrey. No. I've legit seen it. And I'm like, no.
Get out of my face with that.
Get out of here. But DeAndre Swift goes to a landing spot that hasn't had a 1,000-yard rusher since Reggie Bush. It's been a minute, which is why they went out and they got him with very good draft capital. Other than that and superstition, I don't really know why you'd hate him necessarily being in Detroit other than Kerryon Johnson, but Kerryon Johnson's been injury prone. DeAndre Swift is a better runner than Kerryon Johnson is by far. He's also a very good receiving back. I could see in 2020, I think that DeAndre Swift has a pretty good opportunity to get a lion's share of the work early in the season because of Kerryon Johnson's injury history. I think that he's going to get a pretty decent chunk and get some good run early. And I think that when that happens, I don't know that they're going to look back. And unless something happens to Swift, he gets injured or something like that, once he gets it, he's better than Kerryon Johnson is. I think that he's going to be the guy that gets it the majority of the time. They've been desperately wanting that running back presence in that offense to take some of the pressure off of Matt Stafford and to keep defenses honest. And I think that DeAndre Swift can do that. This year, he's probably about a flex play is what I would say for this season in terms of value, unless he just absolutely blows up one game and they go, okay, he's the dude, we're giving him 22 carries a game. I don't necessarily see that happening, so I'd feel better with him as a flex play. Like if you can get him as your third running back on your team in redraft, third or fourth running back on your team, I'd be fine with that. But from a long-term perspective, I think that entering 2021, he's going to be in a good situation to start creeping up those ranks into that solid RB2, potentially flirting with RB1 value, depending on what we see him do this season.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you just said. I have him for 235 carries this year, which is decent.
It's a pretty decent load.
It is decent. with the target share that I think Kerryon will still command, I don't think it's enough to get him anywhere close to RB1 territory, and he's not even in RB2 territory for me. But like you said, flex play is fine, and he 100% has the talent and the pedigree to be an RB1 in the not-so-distant future. So, high-end first-round rookie-type pick. We like DeAndre Swift as a talent. The main question mark is how it pans out in Detroit, where there's been a lot of running back suppression.
Right,
but hopefully it goes well. Are you interested at all in Kerryon Johnson? Considering what we've seen from him, if he can get healthy, no.
Not really. I think that they've shown with the draft capital they gave Kerryon Johnson, or gave DeAndre Swift rather, that they're going to give DeAndre Swift an opportunity to win that job. So I think that Kerryon Johnson, who I loved entering last season, I think that he's on the decline. So, I mean, maybe I would take a shot. Maybe I'd give someone a late second, early third for Kerryon Johnson and just see what happens. Maybe he lands on a different team or something like that, because he is young. So, I'd give a late second, early third for Kerryon Johnson and just kind of hold him and see what happens.
I really like that. If somebody's willing, they drafted him and they're tired of his injuries and having to put him in their IR spot all the time. Mm-hmm. Throw out a late second if you can get it. I think that's a pretty good value. I'd like that stash. Okay, wide receiver position. Now, we're going to mostly set aside the fact that Kenny Golladay is on the COVID list. We don't know yet why, and certainly for Dynasty, it shouldn't have affected his value too much. Let's start with him. Very, very talented, very productive in his first couple seasons. Young wide receiver, drafted back in 2017 in the 3rd round. So I think he's far outplayed that. 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns last year, John. He led the NFL in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns.
Which is crazy that 11 led the league.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was the lowest.
Low.
I looked at one point. I think it was the lowest in like 2 or 3 decades.
Wow.
The lowest leading.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised by that, but yeah. That's crazy.
How high can Kenny Golladay get for fantasy? Are we talking about him as one of the super elites?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think that he has potential super elite status. He is 26 now. I think he's 27 in season, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
November, yes.
So he is kind of getting up there a little bit. Like, he's not, a 23-year-old. Took him a little bit to come on and take over the Babytron mantra there in Detroit. He's incredibly talented. I love him. I think he's great. I think that he will probably slot in somewhere between wide receiver 8 and 12 or 14 most seasons. So he'll be like kind of right in that bracket, in my opinion, of someone that is going to get you very, very, very solid production. But I don't see him being the 1,400, 1,500 yard wide receiver like the elites of the elites, the Julio Jones, the DeAndre Hopkins, those kind of guys. I like him a lot. And maybe he's got that potential. Maybe he is still taking steps forward and he can break through and hit that. And I would love it. He's a talented wide receiver, but it's not enough for me yet from what we've seen to put him on that trajectory for that elite echelon of wide receivers.
Okay. I don't hate it. It's hard to get into that elite echelon, and I don't have him technically ranked there. I have him as my wide receiver 8 in Dynasty, which is it's very good. It's very good, but it's not quite, the Chris Godwin or what Odell used to be or what Michael Thomas is now. It's not that guy that you're considering drafting in the first couple picks of a Dynasty startup.
Right.
However, I will point out that what he did last season, which was very, very productive, was half without Matthew Stafford. His full game season on the pace he was on with Stafford was 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns, which is even better if you do math than 1,111. So now am I projecting for that? Not quite, but this could be a guy who is perennially competing for the touchdown lead, along with like Devontae Adams and maybe Tyreek Hill type players. and is putting up 1,200 yards on the regular, I think he's going to be in that top 6 range potentially within a couple years, or certainly could be. Whether he ever gets to the top 3 or top 2 and becomes the super elite is certainly less certain. But
yeah, it's within the range of outcomes, absolutely. Like it very well could happen, but I'm not like super gung-ho confident that that's where he's headed. It could very well, because like you said, what he was doing in the early part of last season was absolutely phenomenal. He's 6'4", he's a massive target. He's that kind of prototypical wide receiver build, wins contested catches in the red zone very, very well. So yeah,
among
maybe
the best potentially.
Yeah, you could say that. I think that's fair.
All right, moving on from Golladay, let's go to a much older player, bit more seasoned, but potentially just as valuable in his own way. Marvin Jones, 30 years old, which seems older than he even is. Maybe it's just his baby face. But Marvin Jones is 30, entering now his 9th season. Listen, this guy manages to score touchdowns every single year. 9 touchdowns 3 years ago, 5 touchdowns 2 years ago in just over half a season, and 9 touchdowns last year in only 13 games. Pretty much since he's come to Detroit, this guy has been one of the most reliable touchdown threats. Now, he has missed 10 games over the last 2 seasons, so that's not great. But assuming he stays healthy on a team that their potential wide receiver 3/4 in Allison is now opted out for the season. After Golladay, who we just mentioned, it's Danny Amendola.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones could certainly threaten 110, 120 targets, maybe even more. And with that kind of workload, score 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. What are you okay, you don't have Marvin Jones, but you're looking to contend. This guy might have been one who actually made it on our guys to buy in the contenders situation pods. I can't remember. But what are you willing, and it doesn't even have to just be picks, but maybe it's a package deal. What are you trying to get rid of to get a guy like Marvin Jones for this year and maybe next?
Ooh, that's interesting. I think it's a lot easier to put value when talking about picks. I'd be fine with giving a second for Marvin Jones. In terms of player value, Marvin Jones is a guy. So here, let's back up a little bit. So I just posted a article in our ADP series that you were alluding to earlier, is Patreon exclusive, talking about Marvin Jones. He was one of the guys in there that, according to Sleeper's ADP, is a screaming value. He's going right now as the wide receiver 58, 5'8".
In redraft.
Yes, it's absolutely
that is
ludicrous.
Just silliness.
It just doesn't make sense. People are just forgetting about him. When you look at what he did last season, if you took the 8-game stretch, because Stafford played exactly half a season, 8 games. If you take the 8 games with Matt Stafford last year, he was on pace for 1,070 yards and 12 touchdowns. I'm not forecasting those numbers for him, but he looks like someone that could be a very, very solid wide receiver 2 or flex play on your roster that people are forgetting about.
Completely.
Like, I don't understand it. So if you've got a younger player that maybe the person who has Marvin Jones just is asleep at the wheel and doesn't understand kind of the value that he brings to that offense, you might be able to get Marvin Jones plus for something that you're willing to give up. Like I would do, and this is for our Patreon community specifically, because this is a player that they love to talk about. I would give Hollywood Brown for Marvin Jones and a pick.
Wow.
All day long.
Wow.
All day long.
I was going to throw some young names at you to see what you'd be willing to give up. Now, Hollywood for Jones and a pick, I could certainly see. I thought you were going to say straight up, and that was
not straight.
I was going to be a little concerned. But let me give you some young names. Straight up, if you're a contender, do you give these young names to get Marvin Jones? Deontay Johnson.
No, I want Deontay.
Okay. Anthony Miller?
Marvin Jones.
Ooh. Darius Slayton.
Marvin Jones.
Mecole Hardman?
Marvin Jones by a lot.
Yeah. Okay. So the Deontay Johnson potential breakout to high-end wide receiver 2 territory is a territory where you're going to cut it off and keep that guy. But I think that's pretty fair. If you've got a young guy who, is more of a risky potentially one-day wide receiver 2, I'm very willing to sell. Go get you some Marvin Jones and win a championship because he's going to contribute a lot this season and maybe even a couple more seasons. Again, 30 years old, he probably has 2 seasons left of good production.
Stafford could legitimately set his career high in touchdowns this year.
Yes, would not surprise me.
So if there's so much to go around for Golladay, for Marvin Jones, for Hawkinson to take a step forward into his second year. We're not expecting a ton out of Hawkinson, but he'll step up. Like if you tell me that he has 600-700 yards and 5 to 6 touchdowns, yeah, I'd buy that this year. There's going to be enough to go around where both Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones could potentially be double-digit touchdown guys.
I like it. Well, you know what? Let's just touch on the man you just mentioned, TJ Hawkinson, then we'll be done with the Lions. Mm-hmm. Highest drafted tight end in the class last year. Class, not this current last draft, but the 2019 draft. A class full of good tight ends. 8th overall.
High.
Yeah. Only started 7 games, played in 12 last year. He did deal with some injuries. Showed some tiny flashes, mostly showed some drop problems.
Yeah.
His week 1 performance that everybody freaked out about, 131 yards and a touchdown, was
against the Cardinals.
Yeah, which is why it happened, because the Cardinals were the worst against tight ends, almost equated to all the rest of his season added together. So, but still a great prospect. A lot of people had him as their tight end 1 in that class. Obviously, the Lions did. What do you think? What is your temperature on TJ Hawkinson for Dynasty?
I'm going to back up for a second. I don't remember a specific positional advantage streaming situation as outlandish as any tight end against the Arizona Cardinals last year.
Yep.
I've never seen it where it was like, go down the list of streaming tight ends. Are they playing the Cardinals? Yes, plug them. Without question, it was ridiculous. But Hawk's really interesting. He's very athletic. He comes from Iowa. He was the successor to George Kittle.
Tight end U.
Yeah, no kidding. They're just pumping him out, which is great. Very athletic. Yeah, the first season, I think the injuries really hurt him. The losing Stafford in the middle of the season, I think, really hurt him. Mm-hmm. So from a dynasty standpoint, yeah, I'm still in on Hawk. I don't think that he has a massive breakout this season, but I think he could be a year 3 breakout candidate. In 2021, I think that he could be looking at some pretty good numbers.
Yeah, if you don't have him, I would definitely be interested in going out and getting a temperature on his price, because he just came off a bad season, which as a rookie tight end, what do you expect? That is what you should expect. It was maybe especially bad for what he was drafted at, but still going into a season where there's a lot of uncertainty, currently on the COVID list, maybe you can get him for a really good deal. And you know how I like to stash those young tight ends. He is a fringe tight end 1 for me in Dynasty, and certainly could break out in a couple years, like you said, to be a huge screaming value based on the price you can probably get him for right now. So I'd go check it out.
Yeah, he could be. If you told me that in 2021, TJ Hawkinson was a top 5 tight end, I'd buy it.
Sure.
Like that, he could have that kind of year where he was like last year's Mark Andrews and just absolutely bursts onto the scene. I could see TJ Hawkinson having that kind of season in 21, maybe 22. But yeah, stash the young tight end that had a bad, weird, injury-riddled rookie season with an injured quarterback. Yeah, I'm all about that.
All right, let's move on from the Lions and go over to the Bears. Oh my.
Bears.
Yeah. What an interesting situation we've got over here. So obviously the biggest point of order for the Bears this offseason was the signing of Nick Foles. A lot of people assumed they'd given up on Trubisky at that point, or they would soon do so when Trubisky had a bad start to the season. But Zeddy's no chance for that anymore, because Mr. Nick is not going to play this year. One of the opt-outs for COVID.
Wait, hold on. Was he or did he? No. I don't think he did. I think that was a rumor.
Are you
that
sure?
they debunked. I'm checking right now.
Ooh.
Hold on.
Breaking news or
Please hold.
unbreaking news.
Unbreaking news.
I'm not seeing anything.
I don't think that he did. I think that we have
maybe that was
from
fake news.
I think we had a rumor from a beat reporter. That went a little
that he was
AWOL.
Considering it. Okay.
So why don't you talk
Continue.
about Trubs?
Sure.
Talk about Trubs for a second.
Do some extra research.
Yeah.
One piece of news that I do know is true, while John confirms that one, is that Nagy said that it would be a competition. And they would basically see what would happen. And that's kind of what we all expect. Even the guys who are fully on the Foles train, a.k.a. my lovely co-hosts, John and Betts, believe that Trubisky will start the season. Now, they believe that within 6 games, I think, or so, he will lose that job because he's doo-doo. Yes. I believe that he has shown enough flashes that I still am going to give him another year, maybe even another 2 years. He's young. He was a very high-drafted quarterback who did not have a lot of experience in college. He did not have several years of being a starter. This is no Dwayne Haskins situation, or this is a Dwayne Haskins situation.
Didn't he have 12 career starts in college?
Yes, it was. I believe that is the correct number. It was a very small amount of one season at a university that's not known for pumping out quarterbacks.
Right. By the way, Garofolo did confirm that is not true.
Okay, fake news
about Nick Foles.
Thank you. So he's still there to compete for this job.
Yes.
I have said that I believe Trubisky will hold on for this year. You do not believe so. What for Dynasty? It's even harder than it is for redraft, because in redraft you're basically not drafting either, even in a 2 QB league. But in Dynasty, especially in a super flex, what are you doing with either of these guys or both? For the non-YouTube watchers who are doing it wrong, John just gave a shrug emoji, and that's basically all that can be said.
I don't know. In startups right now, they're basically both going what you would equate to undrafted. They're both going as like quarterback 4s in superflex startups. Like Trubisky's probably going in like the quarterback 40 range. Like no one wants it. They're like, I don't know. I don't like it. He sucks. He hasn't looked good. I'm not interested. They've got competition with Foles now. This might be the last year of Trubisky before he just disappears into the wilderness. People don't want anything to do with it, and neither do I. I'm just not interested in either of these quarterbacks. If I had to take one, I'll take Foles.
Wow.
Because we have more of a proven track record of Nick Foles, which is not saying much.
No, it's not.
Than we do about Trubisky. But he knows the system. I think it's the quarterback coach there in Chicago was his quarterback coach in Philly. There's some connection to his time in Philly on that coaching staff. So he's got a little bit of an understanding there, I think, of the familiarity aspect, the language of it. Nick Foles is a more accurate passer than Trubisky is. Now, Trubisky does bring some athletic upside. He's a better runner than people give him credit for.
Which is good for fantasy.
But, man, he just looked so bad last year. So bad. I don't want any part of either in Dynasty. Okay. I don't have any of them on the 1,000 teams that I do have. I have zero exposure to the quarterback position in Chicago, and I'm not going out and acquiring any. I'm just not interested. Because guess what? In 2021, they're drafting his replacement.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's happening.
If Trubisky is the price that you mentioned he is, I'm 100% going out and getting a piece. Now, to be fair, I believe in Trubisky more than maybe the average bear. No pun intended.
Trubisky or Josh Rosen?
Trubisky. Easily.
I don't know. I'd probably be more willing to go with Josh Rosen.
First of all, Trubisky has shown fantasy upside. Plenty of it. Actually, quite a bit of it. Josh Rosen has shown absolutely nothing for fantasy. And Trubisky is still competing for a starting job, the probable incumbent to start the season, and has to lose it by playing terribly. Josh Rosen getting passed around on people's benches in the NFL, let alone in fantasy. So
hey, he's only been passed around once at this point. Keep that in mind. So no, he's gonna. Josh Rosen. I feel so bad for Rosen.
It's rough.
So bad.
Trubisky is, if you can get him for a price that's below quarterback 2 price in a Superflex league, and I have him ranked there even, by the way, by a decent amount. Well, sure, why not? Even if he loses his job to Nick Foles, we've seen plenty of other quarterbacks, especially in the Superflex, come around and suddenly be starters on other teams for surprise reasons. So I say he's a stash. John says get rid of him. I'm sure Betts would agree with John. So if you want the majority vote, there it technically is. Moving on from the doo-doo quarterback position here, let's go to a also not great position, the running back position.
Yeah.
David Montgomery. He's David Montgomery, okay? He's like the Frank Gore 20 years ago. Well, he's like if Frank Gore right now was 20 years younger. Because Frank Gore 20 years ago was even better than David Montgomery, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, Frank Gore was awesome back in his prime.
He was great.
Those San Francisco days were fun, man.
David Montgomery is kind of just meh. He is going to get a lot of carries. He is going to have a poor rushing average, in my opinion. And he's not going to score a lot of touchdowns necessarily because I don't really believe in this offense overall. It doesn't help that the quarterback situation makes no sense. We just talked about that. So back-end RB2 for David Montgomery. Are you buying or selling at that range?
I'm holding.
Holding at that range.
I'm holding there because he's going to get the volume. They have nobody else other than slot receiver Tariq Cohen. So and I think Null. I think Ryan Null is the backup there. So it's going to be David Montgomery. He's going to see 225 to 250 carries on the season. If he can increase his efficiency metrics and get a little bit involved in the passing game, he has some upside still. I'm not out on David Montgomery. I still think that he could be okay. I don't think that he has elite upside. He's perfectly fine.
Yep, he's perfectly fine. And I mean, it's worth mentioning. I feel like the Dynasty community, Dynasty Twitter was big on David Montgomery coming in.
So hot last year.
Big PFF grades, really lovable guy for the analytics.
Noisy Huevos was obsessed.
Yes, but
mandatory Montgomery.
He's a 3rd-round running back. Okay, he's not even a DeAndre Swift capital. Certainly not a first-round capital. And he came from Iowa State. Yeah, this is not a guy that I'm going to rest on the laurels of his capital or his pedigree to say, well, I know he had a not-so-great rookie season, but don't worry, he's going to come around. I don't feel that confident. So I think I might even sell at the low-end RB2 price. I don't blame the hold because, listen, volume to a degree is king in fantasy, and he's going to have that. So if you can flex him, I feel good about that. If he's your RB2, I don't feel good.
I don't like him as my RB2. I'd feel much better with him as my RB3. But I also tend to go RB heavy early in my draft. So if I went like absolute stud wide receiver or a George Kittle Kelsey early and he ended up being my RB2, okay, I might go with it. But yeah, I'm not super confident in saying just you wait, he's going to break out. I'm not saying that, but he's going to get the volume. His volume was very inconsistent last year for weird coaching decisions. I think that they're going to lean a little bit more on that this year, and I'm hopeful that he's going to get some stuff straightened out. So that's where I'm at with Montgomery.
Tariq Cohen, PPR running back, yay or nay? Do you want to own him?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
60 plus receptions.
Yes. Go get him, people. Yeah. Dynasty PPR value is there for Tariq Cohen, 100%, because he's going to catch passes, a lot of them. All right, let's move on to the real pass catcher. Oh, I don't even want to say real because Tariq Cohen is 100% real. But let's move on to the guys who are supposed to be pass catchers, the wide receivers.
You mean the one guy that's going to be a pass catcher in that offense?
Yeah, Allen Robinson is the man.
I love it.
He is, as far as I'm concerned, the Bears offense. Really the only piece that I really, really like. I do also like the wide receiver 2 here for Dynasty, but we'll get to that in a second. Allen Robinson going to be a target hog. He has been extremely productive with the poop targets that he's gotten in his career.
I feel so bad for the quarterbacks that he's been exposed to. Are you kidding? Like, this guy would be widely considered an elite wide receiver if he had
this guy's on the
anything
Chiefs,
at quarterback. Oh my gosh.
Instead of Tyreek Hill, I think he's the same rank as Tyreek Hill for Dynasty.
Yeah, he'd be top 5.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. He's a stud. He's amazing. Give this guy a freaking quarterback for once, please.
Yes. Maybe they'll be bad enough to get a top 10 pick, but I honestly don't even know if that's the case.
Oh, I think so. And we need to talk a little bit about holdouts there because they lost their nose tackle and a safety are both deciding to opt out this season.
That defense is not what it once
The defense is not what it was. And if you're saying the onus has to go on either a Trubisky or Foles-led offense, I don't like it. This could be not a 4-win team. Like they could be a top 10 pick.
All right, well, let's hope for their case and for Allen Robinson's case that it is.
For A-Rob,
assuming they don't get Trevor Lawrence. Well, what are you doing? What are you doing with Allen Robinson in Dynasty? For me, he's kind of a mid-range wide receiver 2, just because of how bad that quarterback situation is. But do you think he's closer to being a wide receiver 1?
I think he's closer to a 1 than he is to a 2. I think that he's a top 14 guy is probably where I would put Allen Robinson.
That's quite good.
He's so talented. I can't quit him. I want to rank him lower. I keep wanting to move him down because I hate that offense so much. But he was a fringe wide receiver 1 guy last year with the absolute garbage that he had from Trubisky. True. I don't really think it's going to get worse. I think that he's going to be right in that range again. Might sneak his way into like the 8-9 range on the season, maybe, because he's going to hog all the targets on that offense. I don't know why, by the way, they've got 9,000 tight ends that are going to contribute for a total of 400 yards. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, Allen Robinson, to me, I love him. He's a stud. I think that they're going to get him an actual quarterback next year. So for Dynasty, I'm probably buying Allen Robinson because I think that he's widely being considered less than where I have him at in my heart's eye. So I'm going out and trying to get me some Allen Robinson for people that are thinking that he's more of just a wide receiver 2 range.
I like that. I have him as wide receiver 2, but I still like that because of the upside that is there if he ever gets a true quarterback. And worth mentioning, he is entering his 7th season, but not yet 27 years old.
Yeah,
he'll turn 27 later this month, so he's still got definitely 2 or 3 years left.
Allen Robinson and Kenny Golladay are the same age.
Yeah, that's a bit quick, right?
What?
Came in the league at 21. That's what you get when you come in the league at 21.
Gotta love those early players, man.
Okay, quickly on Anthony Miller. I'm a big Anthony Miller fan. I think he's shown a lot of upside and had a pretty decent showing last year despite having a shoulder injury all year long. I think this is a guy who could break out into wide receiver 2 territory. Maybe not this year, but fringe this year and wide receiver 2 within a couple years. Do you like Anthony Miller close to as much as I do, or he's kind of meh for you?
He's kind of meh for me, but I can see what you're saying. Because I'm kind of predicting the same thing for the Chicago offense as a whole, right? Where I kind of think this year is going to suck, but I think that 2021 is going to take a step forward. So I could see it. I've got him lower on my boards than you do. Every single draft that you and I are in, I know that you're walking away with Anthony Miller.
True.
Every single time. So I'm not quite as high up as you are, but I understand the thought process on it and think that he could emerge into a top 24 guy in a year or 2.
Tight end situation. Holy mackerel.
I don't know. I don't want
a hot mess. Let me ask you this question, John. In Dynasty, Jimmy Graham or Matthew Betts for your tight end?
Cole Kmet. That's who the tight end is.
Yes, that is the correct answer.
Matthew Betts, probably. Matthew Betts, I can guarantee, is running a better 40 and a better 3-cone time than Jimmy Graham at this point.
Got him.
Got him.
Get wrecked, Jimmy Graham. Yeah. Listen, no interest in Jimmy Graham. I am a big fan of Cole Kmet. Was by far my number 1 tight end in this draft class.
Absolutely.
I think he looked great at the combine. Good prospect. I am very interested in going out and getting him. Maybe halfway into or well into this season when he hasn't done much, because he's not a, gonna be out of the gate 700-yard tight end rookie, which is pretty rare anyways, but he was the highest drafted tight end, and I think he has a big future in 2 or 3 years. So if you can stash him, feel free.
No, I totally agree with that call. I love Cole Kmet. For some reason, I don't know why, he was the highest drafted tight end in the NFL draft. Had great production, great film. Everything looks fantastic for Cole Kmet, but everyone was asleep at the wheel in my rookie drafts. And I just kept picking up Cole Kmet because everyone is like, there's so many wide receivers. I'm going to go grab all the wide receivers. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I took Cole Kmet in the third of like every single rookie draft that I was in and feel like I'm stealing. I'm just like, and Cole Kmet is my mandatory third-round pick.
Locking in.
Yeah.
All right. We are 2 teams out of 4 into this division, John. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it's 50 minutes into the podcast right now.
Hey, Betts. Love you, buddy.
Yeah. We don't give a crap.
Right.
Listeners, we love you. If you're still here, thank you, and welcome to the second half of the podcast. We'll see if we can keep it under an hour and a half, but this is what happens when Betts is gone.
I love it. I love it so much.
Quickly, before we get to our next team, brief word from our sponsor, Trophy Smack. Trophies, the dopest trophies you've ever seen. Championship belts, rings for your leagues. It is the best product on the market for winning your fantasy championships. If you are a recent champion, if you are a commissioner, you need to go check out TrophySmack.com. They have dope stuff. And if you buy a trophy or a belt right now, and you use the code REDSHIRTS, very easy because that's the name of our podcast, you get a free ring. Okay, it looks like a Super Bowl ring. It is, let's say, diamond studded. I think it's technically cubic zirconia or something similar, but it is flashy and beautiful and worth bragging about. You can wear it to your draft. You can send pictures on whatever social media app you use. Hashtag Snapchat. I don't know. I don't even use my Snapchat that I technically still have, I think. But flash your ring in front of your league mates, or if you're a good commissioner, get the trophy and the ring for whoever won the championship. So go check that out, TrophySmack.com. Use code REDSHIRTS. All right. Second half of the show. Let's get it. Let's go to the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes.
Actually, a lot of interesting pieces here. I feel like it's a little bit better than the hot mess we just covered with the Bears.
Way better.
Let's start at, I feel like the wide receiver position is pretty interesting. So let's start at wide receiver. We're going to shake it up. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, now gone to Buffalo, was a strong dynasty asset there. Never quite hit the wide receiver 1 territory he could have. But while he was busy not quite doing that, Adam Thielen did. Now, Adam Thielen is also much older, quite old, into his 30s, yes. But still producing at a very high level. Also is not a guy who necessarily has been played 700 games in his career despite being 30. What is your dynasty temperature on Adam Thielen? Is he close to wide receiver 1 still for you, or is he dropping down because of age and you're not interested?
He is a wide receiver 2 for me that I think can produce potentially wide receiver 1 numbers because of the target share that he's going to command with no longer having Stephon Diggs.
For just this year?
For just this year. I have him like it's this year. He's a potential win now piece.
Okay.
He's another guy that I'm looking at as being like a 1-year rental. I think Justin Jefferson is going to be the lead dog in that offense in 2021.
Wow.
I think so. I love Justin Jefferson, the prospect. Absolutely love him. Thielen's very, very good, but he is starting to get up there. I think that he's going to produce very well this year. I think that he's going to have a massive target share. He could be one of those very rare wide receivers that's like 28% plus in terms of target share in that offense, because it's him and then it's Justin Jefferson, Justin Jefferson's on the COVID list.
Yes, he is.
So he's having a weird shortened preseason that doesn't have a preseason already. So it's going to be Thielen that's going to start the year. Justin Jefferson might take some time to catch up to the NFL speed of things without a preseason, without camp, without anything.
Now, we talked about Marvin Jones being worth a second-round pick and named some young guys to be willing to trade that were pretty decent. I don't think there's probably much debate that Adam Thielen is a better 1-year rental than Marvin Jones, despite how much we like Marvin Jones. Are you willing to give a late first for Adam Thielen?
If I'm looking for a piece that's going to kind of put me over the top, I've already got an elite wide receiver 1 Yeah, I'd do it. Like,
Okay.
for sure. If I was
Yeah.
a team that finished like 3rd, 4th last year, and I've got that team coming back, and I'm like, okay, this could be a stud wide receiver 2 with wide receiver 1 upside for 2020, where I can plug him in with Julio Jones. Like, yeah, I'm rocking with that for sure.
Yeah. Listen, guys. On average, technically, you should win a championship every 12 years if you're in a 12-man league. That is how the averages work. So if you can lock in a championship right now with Adam Thielen instead of getting, next year's Henry Ruggs, okay. 100% do it. I'm definitely with you on that one. Quickly on Justin Jefferson.
Late first have what, about a 30% hit rate?
Yeah, exactly. You're not even guaranteed to get anything close to what Thielen is now or ever was.
Exactly.
Yeah, agreed. Justin Jefferson, on the COVID list, as you mentioned, we loved him as possibly the best first-year rookie receiver, like actually contributing in redraft. But that aside, in Dynasty, very high upside for the future, connected to a good quarterback who's going to be there and be able to hit him with reliable targets. Obviously a great prospect out of LSU, a guy with, I would say, 100 catch upside. I'd be curious to hear if you disagree with that sometime in his career. Okay, no disagreement there. I don't think you're really buying him. I don't think there's a way to buy him because whoever just drafted him in the first round of your rookie draft. But maybe put a note for yourself at the end of this year when he either missed part of the season due to being on the COVID list or had a slow start and didn't maybe have quite as good a year as you expected. Go out and get him. I would give probably a high first for him, depending on what obviously the prospects next year look like. But if he shows flashes of the talent we saw at LSU, the situation here is incredibly good. Like, there is a very low chance that people in next year's rookie class are going to get any better of a situation than this.
Yeah, agreed.
I would make a reminder for myself to go and look at the price to get him next year and be willing to pay a very high price.
Yeah, I agree with that. I love him. I love his situation. I love the quarterback play. I love the system. I love the running back that's currently there that's hopefully getting extended. They've got a great, a defense that has been solid that is currently struggling, which means more upside from a passing perspective. I think he's in a great standpoint. It's going to be interesting to see the landing spots of next year's rookie wide receivers, but there might only be 3 or 4 wide receivers next year that I'd be willing to own ahead of Justin Jefferson.
Word. Quickly on the tight ends, I think we can be relatively quick here because Kyle Rudolph is a veteran that has been good for fantasy. That he just got extended, but I don't think you want him even on a starting roster unless you're in a tight end premium league. Would you disagree with that at all?
No, because they basically only use him between the 20s.
So I don't even know if
he has no red zone work.
And then you've got Irv Smith.
Let's go.
He actually was one of my favorite prospects. I think he might have been my tight end 2 in that class, which was somewhat of a hot take, but certainly has a high ceiling for the future. The question is how long it will take him to get there, especially with the Kyle Rudolph extension. Where are you stashing him, like, for a late second right now if you can?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
No, I would do that easily.
Mid-second?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love Irv Smith Jr. Like, he's a massive tight end breakout candidate for me. I am targeting him everywhere that I can get him and holding on because I think that he is one of those guys that's right on the cusp, and it just depends really on Kyle Rudolph. And when Kyle Rudolph starts to downtick a little bit, which I think is coming soon, it's going to be Irv Smith that's going to take that over and run with it in a hurry. He's uber athletic, like crazy physically gifted at the tight end position. He's a pass catching tight end. He's not a line him up in line and he's an extended offensive lineman. No. He's a line him up outside. He's a wide receiver in a tight end's body, which is what you want for fantasy. So I'm all in on that. I think that the breakout is coming. It's just a matter of time. Could potentially be down the stretch this year, maybe into 2021. But I'm stashing Irv everywhere.
If you have Jared Cook and you're looking to start rebuilding, you're trading him for Irv Smith?
Oh yeah. If
All
I'm
right.
rebuilding, I'm sending Jared Cook for Irv Smith Jr. for sure.
If
You
you're
might be able
rebuilding,
to, you might
are
be
you
able to get
sending
more.
Zach
Like
Ertz for Smith and a pick?
depending on the pick, yes, because
First
I think
rounder.
that Zach. Oh, a first and Irv Smith for Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You doing that? Ooh,
I'm doing that.
All right.
If I'm rebuilding, I'm doing that.
All right. That's some faith.
Mhm.
Okay. Let's go to the running back position. Listen, it's Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
The main question, of course, is his contract situation because he has expressed potential or did express the potential of a holdout, but he is reporting for camp. So it sounds like either they're going to work something out or he's just going to play.
Actually showed up early on the first day.
Oh, there you go, Dalvin. Now, listen, just a quick announcement for all you running backs out there. That's how you get paid. You don't do a Le'Veon Bell. You show up early.
Don't do Melvin Gordon. Don't do Melvin Gordon. It doesn't
Get out
work.
of my face with that. Good job, Dalvin. Listen.
Yeah, right choice.
I have said on this podcast, Dalvin Cook, I believe, is one of the most talented running backs in the league, arguably top 3, in my opinion. He is a beast. He can catch the ball. He can run the ball. He has great vision. He is explosive as heck. Arguably one of the most... I think maybe Saquon Barkley and him are the conversation for most explosive, just in terms of being able to suddenly... Derrick Henry's up there as well, but maybe in a little bit different way.
So is Jonathan Taylor, but that's okay.
Okay. I'll believe it when I see it at the NFL level with Jonathan
Did
Taylor.
you see the picture today?
Listen,
Did you
yes.
see?
If we're talking about exploding a brick wall by running through it, I give Jonathan Taylor definitely a nod there.
Had to be said.
Top 5 dynasty running back for Dalvin Cook.
Yep.
Is there any question? Okay, there's not. So he is what he is. Very good. If you don't have him, you're probably not getting him. If you have him, congratulations. At the quarterback position, Kirk Cousins, a kind of another is what he is, not quite in the same way as Dalvin Cook, more in the Jimmy Garoppolo kind of way where he's going to give you 3,500 to 4,000 yards, somewhere in that range, 25 touchdowns, not a lot of picks, and be nice and reliable, a QB2, mid-range QB2. I mean, that's my feeling on him. Do you have any higher hopes for Kirk Cousins than that?
I'm slightly higher, but like when you said that, I had an audible ooh. But the more that I kind of think about it, yeah, maybe that is kind of fair to put him and Jimmy Garoppolo in about the same tier. I think that's probably fair.
Great completion percentage. Not a lot of picks.
Great completion percentage. Yep. Low-ish yardage totals. He's not going to light you up for 4,800 yards.
Nope. Especially on that offense, which wants to run first.
Yeah, exactly. Especially in this game.
You know, if he was in what was Detroit last year or Kansas City, it might be different. But that offense wants to run, or that team wants to run and play defense.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's fair. I'd love him as my quarterback too in a super flex. I think that's great. But yeah.
All
about
right.
it. Great
That's
for completion percentage. If you got him in Scott Fishbowl, congratulations.
Hey,
great Scott Fishbowl quarterback.
Big facts. All right, let's close it out with the Packers, the reigning division champions, one of the best teams in the NFC last year, certainly if you go by record or by the teams in the NFC Championship game. Let's see.
I'm still not sure. I'm still not sure how they did it.
Yeah.
Listen,
they were great defense. It was very strange.
It was
after
the Smith brothers.
Aaron Rodgers, exactly. After watching Aaron Rodgers carry the team for a decade, the Smith brothers came into town, and the Packers were suddenly an elite defense. Well, okay, let's start with the quarterback situation, because obviously that is very interesting here. They have a guy that a couple years ago we were talking. There was a lot of argument about whether he was the GOAT.
Yep.
There certainly was a lot of argument, even more than that, and still is, that he's the BOAT, aka best of all time, just from a pure good quarterback standpoint. And I don't even, I'm not even too far out on that one. And I'm a Tom Brady fan, so he's not even close to the GOAT argument. But this
right.
Aaron Rodgers
in terms of talent.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen anyone better, and I've seen a good amount of the best quarterbacks ever. But the Packers went out and drafted Jordan Love.
Woof.
Why did they do this? I do not know, but they did
Because he's exactly the same age as when they did it to Brett Favre.
It
That's
is indeed. Rodgers about to get Rodgered. In all seriousness, though, do you think Jordan Love is the starter in let me ask you this. Let me ask it this way. How many years until Jordan Love is a starter in Green Bay? The answer could be infinity because he never is, but
I'd put it at 2022.
Okay. 3 seasons from now. I would probably agree with that exactly. That is exactly what happened with Rodgers and Favre. Even Rodgers himself said recently
Rodgers,
that
he was on an interview with Kyle Brandt, and Brandt was asking him about it, and he was like, hey, I understand what's happening. Business is business. He was great in that interview. Like, I was so happy to see it. He was like, right after, it was great. He's talking about like basically sitting in his man cave during the NFL draft. And he saw that like some wide receivers were falling, and he's like, okay, well, cool. Some wide receivers. He was like, that kid out of LSU, Justin Jefferson. He's like, I like that kid out of Arizona State, Brandon Ayuk. He was like, he's naming off, he didn't actually name the players, he named the schools where they're from, which was really funny. And then apparently what he was watching was delayed because news started to like get out. Maybe it was leaked from somewhere from the draft, but he got a text first.
Wasn't me. And
just said quarterback. And he was like, okay. So I stood up and I went back and I poured myself about 4 fingers. And I sat back down because I knew this would be a night where my phone was going to be blowing up all night long.
Oh, boy.
But he handled it incredibly well. I like that he just went quiet after the draft. And he's like, I'm just not gonna like feed into it. I'm just gonna kind of disappear. I'm just gonna go into my isolation bunker. Handled it incredibly well. The interview was great. He's like, business is business. I know what's going on here. I know they're gonna move on, basically. So he's acknowledging it. They're not just drafting his backup, they're drafting his replacement. And he knows that that's the case in Green Bay. It's just a matter of when.
All right, so let's see. I don't want to spend too long here, but I feel like we kind of have to. Let's start with Rodgers, and then we'll talk Love. Okay. 36 years old. He will be 37 at the end of this season, which is pretty old.
It's getting up there.
And he's dealt with some injuries in his career. However, the fall-off age for quarterbacks is certainly being pushed higher and higher by the day. Now, let's say that by the end of his time in Green Bay, which we've said is 2022, he's 38 at that point, and he doesn't go and get another job. Although he potentially could. Look what Tom Brady just did at 42. Okay? It's crazy. But let's assume that he doesn't. So we're getting 2 or 3 more years of Rodgers. What do you want from him in Dynasty? What are you valuing him at in Dynasty?
In Dynasty, because I tend to only play 2 to 3 year window, if I'm in a rebuild, I'm probably holding. Because I don't think that he has the value based on what we saw from a fantasy production standpoint last year for you to get enough in return to justify it. Because I think that last year is Aaron Rodgers' floor. I think that we see a little bit of a bounce back this year. So I'm not gonna sell him low, even though I'm rebuilding. Like, I'd sell other assets first, keep Rodgers, maybe try to get another quarterback above him in the rankings, come in with a Carson Wentz or something like that to slot in above Aaron Rodgers. I would love that in a rebuild, but I don't think that you're going to get enough to justify it because everyone's looking at the age, at the Jordan Love signing, at the production last year. It doesn't make sense to sell him at this point. If you've got Aaron Rodgers on your fantasy team, you're probably just riding that into the sunset. Like, that's probably what's going to happen at this point from a dynasty perspective. I have him on a couple. I'm probably just going to ride it out.
I must say, I have heard you say quite a lot of things on this podcast over the months, and I feel like that is one of the best and most intelligent takes you've ever had.
Thank you, sir.
I love that take because I fully agree that Aaron Rodgers just had a down and potentially, as you said, floor season. If he bounces back in a strong way this year, you're going to be able to sell him for a whole round higher pick at least, or a quarterback 5 to 10 spots higher in rankings. So, and by the way, even in a rebuild, you're not taking 5 years to rebuild. You're trying to take 1 to 2 years to rebuild. And that means you could even have him as your starting quarterback in a few years when your team is ready to compete. So
Exactly.
I love that. And by the way, if you are a contender, I love me some Aaron Rodgers. He is a QB1 in Dynasty for me, regardless of what situation you're in. But I think he's in the top 10, certainly, if you're looking to compete for right now. So listen, we just covered everything you need to know about Aaron Rodgers in the most intelligent way I've ever heard. Brilliant.
Same. Agreed.
Now, Jordan Love. What are you doing with Jordan Love? Are you going out and trying to get him right now? Are you just waiting for him to sit for a couple years and then buying him after everybody's forgotten?
Probably that, to be
Okay.
honest, because it's not going to happen this year. I don't think it happens next year. You've got some time to buy him. Wait until you've got a whole new crop of rookies next year, fill in people's radar, and then go out and be like, I'll toss you a third for him.
Yeah. Post 2021, because here's the thing. If you do it post 2022, post 2020 is what I'm trying to say. If you do it post 2021, everybody knows it's time to be Jordan Love season. His price is up. But if you do it post this season, after a season of sitting and he's not starting the next year, nobody cares. Everybody's forgotten about him. Go get him then. That's when his price might be lowest.
He's a perfect January or February target.
Yes.
This next year. Right before the draft, right when people are looking at incoming rookies, right when people are starting to get amped up for draft season, that's when you go out and you get you some Jordan Love.
And as a note, by the way, because we didn't really hit on it, as a prospect, very high ceiling, very low floor.
Yeah,
not one of the super polished guys necessarily.
2018 was so much better than 2019 for him. Uber athletic, very physically gifted. Every once in a while makes one of those throws where you're like, how the hell did he do that?
Drew some Patrick Mahomes upside type comparisons.
Some poor man's Patrick Mahomes
Yes.
was the talk around the combine.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think there's some upside there. Wait until people forget about him and go get him for cheap.
Alrighty. Let's move on to running back, where we had a similar sort of situation happen.
Son of a...
Yeah, I don't know. Listen, I think we can all agree, and maybe should have said at the top, that the Packers draft was the worst of all 32 teams. It was doo-doo, especially for fantasy. Incumbent, veteran, elite fantasy asset in Aaron Jones.
Thank you.
Coming off a number 2 finish, if I'm not mistaken. Correct?
2. Yep.
RB2 behind Christian McCaffrey, albeit by a large amount because it's freaking Christian McCaffrey, but still.
And would have been
huge
behind
season.
Saquon if Saquon wasn't hurt. But yeah, RB3, yeah.
A vast number of touchdowns. I want to say it was 17 or 19 scrimmage touchdowns off the top of my head. Massive season. And then the Packers go out, much like they did with Jordan Love, and draft A.J. Dillon.
250-pound A.J. Dillon.
Yes. Second round, back of the second round as well. So maybe we can take a little bit of solace in that. A lot of talk that Matt LaFleur is going out and trying to get him a new Derrick Henry because
total FOMO draft pick. That's exactly what
he was the offensive coordinator for the Titans and didn't properly use Derrick Henry, and now he went out and got
Deion Lewis a thing.
Yes, and now he went out and got a 6 foot, 247-pound running back out of Boston College, and A.J. Dillon. You are not an A.J. Dillon fan. Is that correct?
I think that he was very mediocre. I didn't hate his film, Thick Freakness with 3 C's.
True.
I love me some Thick Freakness. Very explosive. His combine measurables for what he did, like in the broad jump, in the vert, man, crazy. Like for being that big and to have that much explosiveness is pretty electric.
Inch vert for a 250-pound person.
That's like a basket. That's a basketball player vert, not a football player vert. It was impressive that he did that, but his lateral agility sucks. Like he's not gonna make anyone miss side to side. He's just gonna try and run them over.
Truck him.
Truck stick all day long. Forget about the B button. You don't need it. That's what thick freakness is. I think it's not going to take very long for them to realize that Aaron Jones is the far superior running back on that team. I don't know how stubborn they're going to be with trying to give A.J. Dillon some touches, but I'm looking at this as an opportunity to buy Aaron Jones low, is basically the way that I see it. Because I think that he's far and away the best running back on that team. Incredibly explosive, incredibly talented. Led the NFL in rushing yards per attempt up the middle last season. Not Derrick Henry, not Zeke. No, it was Aaron Jones, who's elite between the tackles, which people don't think that he is. He is. So I think this is a great buy low window on Aaron Jones, who's going to return some great value. Now, he is in a contract year, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
So you've only got this 1 year. I would love for an extension to happen so that I felt good about the long term. But I think that his talent has proven to be what it is, and I think that he's someone that is a safe dynasty asset, even if he does change teams. After this offseason.
Here's one thing I'll say about that too. Aaron Jones is a 5th round pick, and even after last season, which you know what, let me just confirm. It was 19 touchdowns, 19 scrimmage touchdowns, which led the NFL. He's not getting talked about with the elite running backs at all.
Should be.
So I don't think that the Packers are going to have to, and by the way, maybe they even should relative to the other guys, although you shouldn't pay running back anyways. But I don't think they're going to have to pay this guy $12, $13, $14 million.
No, I bet they could probably get it done on like a $9 million a year, 2-year contract.
I was going to say
like
9.5, 10.
Yep.
100%. And if they can do that to a guy who had 19 touchdowns last year, and I fully expect can get 12, 15 this year, they're going to do that. And if they do that, you're going to feel great about Aaron Jones in Dynasty. Get A.J. Dillon out of my face. Aaron Jones is the much more well-rounded running back and has already proven. I love getting him in Dynasty right now. I agree. If you can get him, I don't know why the price might be interesting because of the A.J. Dillon pick.
I think I need to go do a little product
research on this. Yes,
with my league mates. And
I might have to send out some offers wherever I don't have Aaron Jones and see what it takes. But I would 100% give a first for him. Probably a little bit more than that. So, yes, please.
Yeah, I would too. Easy.
Okay. Any interest in Jamal Williams?
Nope.
Okay, let's move on then. Let's say the wide receiver position last because it is a thing. Quickly, we'll hit on the tight end position because it takes about 2 seconds. Jay Sternberger.
Yep.
Texas A&M. Product. Any interest?
Yeah, I'm kind of in. Deep stash.
Okay.
Potential minor breakout candidate this year. Not like major, but I do think that he's going to be fantasy relevant this season. And for what it takes to finish as a back end tight end 1, which is not much. He could be someone that sneaks his way into that conversation where he's 500-600 yards on the season, kind of touchdown dependent, tight end 1 streaming option. Like, I'm not saying that he's going to be this year's Mark Andrews. No. But I think that he is interesting from a long-term perspective in Dynasty. And I think that he finds himself in a situation where he's the clear-cut guy. And he is very athletic. He's very good after the catch. So I think that Jace is intriguing.
Okay. I actually like that a lot. He is a guy who you can stash for a much lower price than a lot of the other young stashes like the Jonnu Smiths and even Ian Thomases of the world. You can stash Sternberger for a round or two less expensive as far as trading a pick for him. And I actually did like him as a prospect. And listen, for reasons we're about to discuss, there is a lot of potential target share in this offense.
Yes, there is.
And the quarterback is very capable of throwing a lot of touchdowns. So I really like that, actually, the call that he could even break out this year. And even if he doesn't, I think he does have a future where he could be a tight end 1. So if you can get him probably for a 4th or a 5th at this point. So go ahead and try to do it. Now, as for that reason, the worst part of the Packers' whole draft was not getting a upside quarterback to back up their older veteran quarterback. It was not getting a pounder potential goal line running back to maybe fill in for some parts of carries with Aaron Jones. No, it was drafting no wide receivers.
Goose egg.
Not a one.
Not a
Donut.
single one.
I don't even know what to make of this. This was the worst thing I've ever seen. They have a elite veteran quarterback in his aging years. They have a great defense and a good running back. All they needed to do to go from
They have a
NFC
stud wide receiver 1.
Yes, all they needed to do to go from NFC Championship game losers to Super Bowl winners, in my opinion, was a great young wide receiver.
Yep.
And they got 0 of them.
None, not a one.
So instead, after Davante Adams, we have Alan Lazard, the opted out Devin Funchess.
Oh, hold on.
and-
We have one other to discuss. Equinemius Tristan Emotep J. St. Brown.
True.
Love me some Equinemius.
Yeah, this is a hot mess. Let's quickly hit on Davante Adams, and then we'll talk about whether you like any of these other guys for Dynasty. Davante Adams is a wide receiver 1 or 2 in Dynasty.
Oh, 1. Are you
Okay.
kidding? He's top 5.
Yeah. No. I meant the wide receiver 1.
Oh, thank you. I was like, excuse me. What?
No.
No, for me
Michael
in
Thomas,
Dynasty,
Davante Adams.
For me in Dynasty, he's my 3. I've got Tyreek Hill above him.
That's right. I do as well. So I baited myself with that question.
Baited yourself.
Yeah.
A master baiter. But but yeah, no, he's a stud. He's absolutely elite. Touchdown upside's incredible. The growth that he's gone through in his career has been absolutely insane. Went from such like reception perception is my favorite thing to look at for him because Harmon just put out a tweet, I think like a week or 2 ago, about this in particular. And he was like, in his rookie season, he had like a 60-something% win rate against man coverage. And last year it was in the 90s. Like
Wow.
the growth that he's done over the course of his career, the work that he's put in to make him an elite, polished, well-rounded wide receiver has been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he's very good.
He's good.
Only scored 5 touchdowns last season. He did miss 4 games, but if you just look at the last 4 seasons in total,
Before
which
that,
is where he broke out, this guy, his seasonal average is 11 receiving touchdowns, which, as a reminder, was the league-leading number. League-leading. Thank you. League-leading number last year. Listen, man, English is a very hard language, okay? Moving on from him, because we all agree he's a beast and top 3 in Dynasty. Sell everything, including your house and your dog, to get him.
Yeah.
Not your dog. That's pretty precious, but the house can go.
Oh, no, Louis is an idiot. Maybe.
After Adams, what are you doing? Are you doing anything?
So, yeah, after Adams, in terms of Dynasty, I think the flavor of the month right now is Alan Lazard, who's a big body. I think he's 6'5", if I remember correctly offhand. He's tall. He had some very promising flashes last year. Rodgers has kind of talked him up. But remember, Equinemius St. Brown 2 years ago was kind of being discussed in that, is this the new wide receiver 2 mold? And then he was hurt a lot of last year. So to me, Equinemius St. Brown is free. Like, he's completely free right now. No one is talking about him. He's going in the 20-plus round range in terms of startups. I'll take that. I'll take that gamble on a guy that, is also 6'5". He's also a big body wide receiver. So Equinemius St. Brown is someone that I've been kind of noodling on over this last week or so. You might have seen me put out some tweets needing information about why he and his 2 brothers are all named after Egyptian gods. I would love the backstory there. Actually, I found out that there is a story on Sports Illustrated that someone linked to me in a comment. And I'm like, oh, thank you. So I'm going to go read that tonight when we're done here because I'm so curious about that family and all that. Amon-Ra St. Brown, by the way, out of USC, is a bona fide stud. Like, I love that prospect. He's going to be fun to watch coming up. But I think that Equinemius St. Brown could really have a role in this offense, and he's free. I'll go give a rookie 3rd for Equinemius St. Brown. I'll take him in a startup at round 20-ish. Sure, why not? The opportunity's there. If he beats out Alan Lazard for the wide receiver 2, There might actually be a viable wide receiver 2 in the Packers offense for the first time in like 3 years.
I don't hate it at all. Alan Lazard is one of the players that we had in at the NFL Network at the end of last season around draft time to talk about that whole situation because he was undrafted. And he is 6'5", 227. You would think he would be, you would think he would be a very intimidating, beastly person. I kind of got, and I hope he's not listening to this podcast. Sorry, Alan. I kind of got this vibe that he is not a dog. As our good friend of the show, Mo, in the Slack chat likes to say. He does not give me that vibe at all. For someone who is 6'5", 227 and can run a 4.5 40, which he did, he should be dominating corners. And I don't fine last year. He had some interesting flashes. I think he's going to be a guy who every season has a game where he scores 2 touchdowns or makes a big catch in the end zone one time and looks good, and we remember him. But I don't think he's going to be a guy who becomes a consistent wide receiver 2 for fantasy.
I think his quote-unquote, air quote, breakout game last year was against Oakland. If I remember correctly, it might have been against Oakland.
Not super encouraging.
Now Las Vegas, and they are a trash secondary. So, yeah, I agree with you. I don't know that he's got it. He's an undrafted free agent, doesn't have that mentality. With that physical skill set, you should be demolishing every single corner in the NFL. You should be able to line up against linebackers and go to work. You should be able to take on most strong safeties and go to work. So the fact that he's not, it kind of tells you something. So, yeah, I'll go get Equanimeous St. Brown for free. Thanks.
Slightly less free than Equanimeous St. Brown is probably Marquez Valdez-Scantling because he's actually done some stuff at the NFL level. He's entering year 3. Maybe he has an actual breakout. He's been in the 400 to 500 yard range each of his first 2 seasons and has only scored 2 touchdowns in each of those seasons. Is he someone you're maybe buying for 3rd as well if you can get it?
Nah.
Okay.
I'm just not.
There you go.
I'm not an MVS guy. I'd rather go with Equanimeous St. Brown.
All right. Well, I was a Geronimo Allison guy out of this whole crew, and he's gone now. So, yeah, this whole receiving core is a mess behind Mr. Devontae. Maybe they get their ish together and draft one next year, but after what we saw this year, I can't even trust that.
No, and honestly, next year's wide receiver core is incredibly good and deep. So here's hoping that they decide to throw something in there. But I don't know. Maybe they're just trying to set Aaron Rodgers up for failure so that they can move on.
There you go. Well, that is it. We have officially crested, actually, technically not. On our live stream recording, we've crested a minute or an hour and 30, the full hour and a half. But in our actual recording, we're just now hitting an hour 29. I am looking. So I feel like we should vamp for a minute just so that we can say we went to an hour and a half.
Betts will be really happy with us, by the way.
Yes, I know.
When he opens his podcast app and texts us and goes, "You idiots went for an hour and a half without me."
For the listeners, we actually did get a text from Betts on the last episode. What do you mean you guys went to an hour and 20 minutes? Well, we've upped the ante, Betts, an hour 30. If we stay at this rate, the next one will be an hour 40 at least.
And that's going to be the AFC North, which has more to talk about than the NFC North.
Indeed. A lot of interesting stuff in the AFC North, including the number 1 overall pick. All right. That's the NFC North. Thank you for listening to the Red Shirts Dynasty podcast. Check out everything on Ball Blast Football. We are a Ball Blast Football production, in case you didn't know that. And you should check out the site, ballblastfootball.com. You should check out the Ball Blast podcast. Great stuff on both of those platforms. If you're not already subscribed to the Red Shirts Dynasty podcast, which I'm guessing you are because you're listening, you should do that. And you know what? If you've made it this far, an hour and a half, and you haven't left a rating and review, I don't even know what you're doing. Because you've put that much time and effort into listening to us, I think you can put in another 2 minutes.
If you're an hour and a half into this thing and you're not in our Patreon, you are exactly the kind of diehard degenerate that we want in our Patreon. Please
get in there.
Get in there and talk with us in the Slack chat.
Thank you for bearing with us this long, people whose ear holes we are still in. To everybody else who left half an hour ago, as you probably should have, good on you. Until next time, when we go 2 hours, we are the Red Shirts.